So oil helping, of course, the Canadian dollar go higher too, with the Norwegian krone as well, strengthening the back of the oil move. But on the downside really is US dollar, and the euro even managing to pick up. But most of the analysts out there, Taylor, saying Europe, we're seeing the Eurozone in an issue, and euro is likely to only be the beginning of how weak it is at the moment. We're seeing weakness across sovereign bonds too.
We saw a little bit of that as well here within full faith and credit. Caroline, price lower, yield higher. So the weakness, of course, in the price is you're getting sort of a lift across the curve, up about 4 basis points or so, pretty much from 10 out to 30 when you think about duration. Yields on the front end unchanged as we, of course, await Friday with Jackson Hole. We sort of continue to go across asset as we always do, wrap up the yield space, go back to the quarterly results, the earnings space. I'm going to take a look at shares of Intuit, and I think what's really interesting, fourth quarter net revenue comes in better than expected, $2.4 billion versus estimates of $2.34, and a bottom line improvement as well. Fourth quarter adjusted EPS $1.10, estimates for 98 cents. And looking at forward guidance, maybe a little bit light when you think about the bottom line. First quarter adjusted EPS 114 to 120, estimates had been for 186. And yet there is sort of a buyback and a dividend as well, Caroline, that gets analysts excited too.
All right, we do want to get to Nordstrom because they too have just reported after the closing bell. This stock initially dropping in the after hours. It's still down about 6%, 7% here. And I'm going right to the outlook because the company says fiscal year adjusted EPS $2.30 to $2.60 a share. They had seen $3.20 to $3.50, so that is a big readjustment, if you will. Still sees fiscal year revenue up 6 to 8%. Second quarter total revenue $4.10 billion. So Caroline, that was a beat. The estimate that was out there was 3.99. Looking at the press conference, we are seeing the CEO say, while our quarterly results were consistent with our previous outlook, customer traffic and demand decelerated significantly beginning in late June, predominantly at Nordstrom Rack.
So some issues in terms of consumers, but also some issues in terms of inventory. It's interesting that Macy's CEO chairman was saying, look, our inventory we think is in a pretty good space, but the industry is awful. Nordstrom saying, we look at the second half of the year, we are aggressively right-sizing our inventory while investing in supply chain and merchandising capabilities. I mean, Katie, this is an issue of some companies got too much of the wrong thing currently in their stores, in particular, everything that we dined out on so much during COVID, your athleisure, your at-home wares, and that's going to be a key issue. They're going to have to sell them off and sell them off heavily discounted.
And especially expected to be a key issue, again, as we head into the holiday season, a critical season. When you think about the Nordstrom reaction that we're seeing after hours, down 7%. Remember, there was a lot of good news priced into the stock after Macy's results earlier. It seems like that's being unwound in a big way, and then some now.
All right, folks, as you mentioned, Nordstrom down about 7% in the after hours. Intuit, though, now with a gain of about 4%, so we'll follow them into the Wednesday trade. All right, that's a wrap. Our cross-platform coverage, radio, TV, YouTube, we call it Beyond the Bell. We will catch you same time, same place tomorrow.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, you are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week on this Tuesday, and I'm just watching these share prices here in the after hours because we're seeing some big moves, and certainly something we'll probably be talking about tomorrow. But the big one, I feel like, is Nordstrom, down about 9%, Katie.
Absolutely, and again, think about the rally that we saw in Nordstrom shares today after Macy's. Didn't quite pan out for Nordstrom when you think about sort of the forecast there, that downgrade and what they're expecting out of EPS.
Yeah, I think what's tricky is that, and I think we talk about it a lot here at Bloomberg, is that, especially when it comes to the retail sector, not everything is alike. And we've talked about the wealthier consumer and high-end, retail seeming to hold up better. And I would say that Nordstrom plays into that. But again, if you've got your inventory levels wrong and you don't have what customers want, that can be a problem.
Absolutely. And I will see how this shakes out tomorrow. Yeah. As of today's close, the shares were still higher by 2% heading into the close, but that could change, just judging by the after-hours reaction. Yeah, Nordstrom still down about 10%. All right, back to World and National News, back to Nancy Lyons in D.C. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Carol. 2 men face life in prison after being convicted of conspiracy to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. The verdict came after jurors heard more than a week's worth of testimony in the case against Adam Fox and Barry Croft. FBI Assistant Special Agent in charge David Porter says the men plan to take their political disagreements to a dangerous level.
You can criticize your government. You can protest. You can vote your elected officials out of office. However, what you cannot do is plan or commit acts of violence.
Again, FBI Assistant Special Agent Porter, both men do plan to appeal today's verdict. Twitter's former head of security has filed a complaint with the U.S. government claiming severe shortcomings in how Twitter handles user data.
The formal complaint alleged egregious deficiencies in Twitter's defenses against hackers and other lax approaches to security. The Washington Post first reported the claims, which include out-of-date software, prioritizing growth over reducing the number of spam accounts, and executives withholding information about breaches. House lawmakers confirmed the complaint, saying they're already reviewing the disclosure and they're looking into what to do next. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
The White House plans to make its long-awaited announcement on student debt relief tomorrow. That's according to people familiar with the timing. The substance of the announcement is not fully clear. It's being closely guarded. President Joe Biden's decision has been long anticipated as he grapples with delivering targeted relief while weighing any fallout, including on already rampant inflation. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take. I'm Nancy Lyons.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much. Nancy Lyons in D.C. Right now you're listening and watching Carol Massar, Katie Greifeld on Bloomberg Business Week. And just real quick rehash of two stocks on the move in the aftermarket. Shares of JWN, we're talking about Nordstrom. They are down about 10, 11%. This after the company, and the big deal is what they had to say about fiscal year revenue, so the outlook. They're expecting 5 to 7% in terms of growth. They had seen 6 to 8%. So right now they're looking for fiscal year revenue. They're looking at fiscal year adjusted, I lost my headline. They moved it around here because the second quarter was actually a beat when it came to revenue. So let me just pull it up again. In terms of fiscal year revenue, they're cutting it. Fiscal year 22 adjusted EPS 230 to 260. It had been what, 320 to 350.
So a dramatic cut there. But tale of two earnings again, because we got into it after the bell as well. Their fourth quarter results, adjusted EPS $1.10 versus $1.97 year over year. The estimate had been for 98 cents, so that was a beat. If you look at the first quarter forecast, they do see adjusted EPS $1.14 to $1.20. The estimate had been for $1.86, but still Intuit shares up over 4% or so at this moment.
All right, so we're going to watch for those companies, certainly in the Wednesday trade, as Nordstrom is under pressure, but Intuit is rallying. In the meantime, a little light of fare, maybe we all need it, on this Tuesday in late August. A luxury yacht, once owned by sanctioned billionaire Dmitry Pompansky, has attracted 63 bids in Gibraltar in the first public auction of an asset seized since the start of the war in Ukraine.
We are talking about a 5-deck, 72-meter yacht. It was put up for sale after J.P. Morgan called in a $20 million loan tied to the vessel. It's a floating palace. It boasts an infinity swimming pool, plus a 3D cinema.
So we talked about right after the war and a lot of seizure of Russian assets, but it is the first super yacht to be publicly auctioned since Russia's invasion of Ukraine pushed authorities to freeze luxury vessels in ports around the world.
headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So we had good news and bad news after the bell. What do you want first? The good news? Okay. Into it with numbers after the bell.
Good news, please.
All right, you've got it. Fourth quarter adjusted EPS beating estimates, and shares right now higher by more than 4% in the late session. That said, on now the bad news, Nordstrom with full year revenue, a forecast of a range between 5% up to 7% up. That's a little bit below what the company saw earlier. They were forecasting in the last messaging anywhere between +6 to +8%. So I'm looking at the stock right now in the late U.S. session, down 11%. Okay, so during the regular session, the equity market was kind of mixed. It was a very light day of trading, summertime volume. We get that. We had some weak economic news, sales of new homes down in July for a sixth time this year, and U.S. business activity in the month of August contracting for a second straight month. But I think it's fair to say, if you're betting that these reports will in any way shift the Fed's mission on fighting inflation with higher interest rates, you may be mistaken, because today we learned directors at two regional Fed banks, St. Louis and Minneapolis, they wanted a rate hike last month of 100 basis points. So the 10-year last quoted in New York at 3.06%. We were up nearly 5 basis points on the day. Dow down today in the regular session, 0.5%. NASDAQ comp flat, S&P 500 weaker by 0.2%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Always something, huh, Doug?
Always something.
Keeping us on our toes. All right, Doug Krisner, thank you so. All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Katie Greifeld. Well, last week, Johns Hopkins joined Andreessen Horowitz, Kaiser Permanente, NBA star Andre Iguodala, and others in an $80 million Series B funding round for Incredible Health, pushing the company into unicorn status. So here with us on the funding raise and really an update on her world, we welcome back Dr. Iman Abuzaid. She's CEO and co-founder at Incredible Health, a frequent guest here on Business Week. And we do like to remind our audience that her company is all about connecting hospitals with nurses and other healthcare workers. And she joins us on the phone from Austin, Texas on this Tuesday. Dr. Abuzaid, nice to have you here with us. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we got to talk about this funding raise. Really impressive. You're now a unicorn. Some really interesting people who are involved in that funding raise. What does that mean for you?
So it means that we're now the highest valued tech-enabled career marketplace for healthcare workers in the U.S. today. Our valuation is at $1.65 billion. And for the first time, we've had our customers, health systems, including Kaiser Permanente and Johns Hopkins, invest in our round two, which really positions us as the leaders in healthcare hiring.
So maybe an obvious question, but this latest round, $80 million, what will you be using the money on?
So we're using the money in three key areas. First is in R&D, so investing in the hiring workflow and automating it with machine learning technology. And that includes automating the screening, automating the matching, just so it's increasingly more personalized and more automated for both the healthcare workers and the employers. We're also going to be investing in career resources for nurses. And so they're using us over the course of their entire career. That includes skill growth, scheduling services, educational scholarships, cross-training, all of which is completely free of charge for nurses. And so we are the place where they manage their careers. And then frankly, just, expansion beyond nurses and beyond hospitals. Because right now we're serving those two markets primarily and have ambitions to support the rest of the healthcare workers and healthcare employers too.
Dr. Abuzaid, step back. I mean, I gave a quick brief description of what you guys are doing, but really explore the platform with our audience to remind them exactly what you are doing, who is on it, how many people, and really the growth that you are seeing month to month.
Sure. Hospitals and other healthcare employers, they use Incredible Health custom matching technology to hire high-quality permanent nurses in less than 14 days instead of the industry average of 82 days. We've saved each hospital facility that we've worked with at least $2 million in travel nurse costs, overtime costs, and HR costs. And the nurses using our platform enjoy an average salary increase of about 15% and reductions in commute time. I guess over the last year in 2021, we grew top-line revenue over 500%. We've now expanded to over 600 hospitals across 25 states. We work with very large health systems, including HCA Healthcare, and Kaiser Permanente. We also work with academic medical centers like Stanford, Cedars-Sinai, and Johns Hopkins. And we have over 10,000 nurses joining our platform every single week.
And that industry average of 82 days, which you've shortened to 14 days, how does 82 days, that average now, compared to what we've seen in the past? I guess what I'm asking is, did the pandemic exacerbate that? Has that average grown longer?
The pandemic has definitely exacerbated that number, so that average has gotten longer because we are continuing to face a very severe labor shortage in nursing and as well as other healthcare professions. And then the other key number that pandemic has impacted is turnover. The average turnover for nurses in the U.S. was about 17% before the pandemic. It's now on average 21.5%.
Well, tell us a little bit about it. I was talking to somebody within the nursing community and just said, COVID, monkeypox, you name it. Women, individuals, men, people who are in the nursing field have just kind of had it. Have we lost, or how many have we lost from this field?
So we're increasingly losing nurses from this field. So our third annual data report from earlier this year showed that 1/3 of nurses are considering leaving the profession permanently by the end of 2022. And so this is a workforce that has been negatively impacted, in some cases, decimated by the pandemic. They are being overworked and experiencing extreme fatigue and stress and burnout at the moment.
And how do you address retention then, if burnout is such a big issue?
So a couple key ways. First, are the employers using our platform enjoy a 15% increase in their baseline retention rates because the nurse was able to consider multiple opportunities before selecting that specific employer. Mm-hmm. But we also in our surveys and our data shows that the top reasons why nurses are changing jobs is by far the number one is career advancement. They're looking for more career advancement. They want to grow their skills, move into leadership, cross-train, right. Become more specialized. And so the hospitals and health systems that are investing in career advancement for nurses are enjoying better retention rates too.
Dr. Abuzaid, we only have about 25 seconds left here. What's the end game for you? Do you go public? Does an Amazon buy you? Just quickly, any thoughts?
Ultimately, our goal is to go public. We are a standalone, building a legendary company with the vision of helping healthcare professionals live better lives and the mission of helping them find and do their best work.
Well, always good to get an update from you. Dr. Iman Abuzaid, co-founder, chief executive officer of Incredible Health, joining us on this Tuesday on the phone from Austin, Texas. This is Bloomberg.
broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, you are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week on this Tuesday. Carol Massar along with Katie Greifel. Coming up, we've talked a lot about healthcare, and coming up, we've got the CEO of Respira Technologies. We'll get into it with him in just a moment. In the meantime, let's get back to your top business stories, because I'm looking at Toll Brothers, Doug Krisner. It's down about 1.5% in the after hours.
So can you tell me about it? I was going to start with Intuit. You're welcome to begin with Toll Brothers. If you want to weigh in, go ahead.
No.
Well, go. No.
All right.
Intuit.
Well,
you can chime in with Toll Brothers when I'm finished, okay? Is that
deal.
fair?
Yes,
All right.
deal.
Intuit after the bell with adjusted EPS for the last quarter that was above estimates. The stock right now has popped about 4% in the late U.S. session. We were talking earlier about Nordstrom. Essentially, the company has cut its revenue forecast for the full year, and shares in Nordstrom right now are down about 13%. If you look at the E-mini futures contracts now for the American market, Dow, S&P 500, NASDAQ 100 contracts all moving lower after a down day for the equity market. It began with some weak economic news. Sales of new homes in July down for a sixth time this year, and U.S. business activity in the month of August contracting for a second straight month. It's also important, I think, to point out what we learned. Two directors, or at least directors from two regional Fed banks, one being St. Louis, the other being Minneapolis, they wanted, past tense, a rate hike last month of 100 basis points. So we saw a move up in the long end of the yield curve today with the 10-year Treasury last quoted just around 3.06%. The Dow off 0.5% today, S&P down 0.2%, NASDAQ comp flat. I'm done with the data check. Carol can talk Toll Brothers if she'd like. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Forgive me. Toll Brothers, by the way, down about 4% in the after hours, Doug Krisner. And I'm looking at some of its outlook. The company talking about fiscal year deliveries now, 10,000 to 10,300. It had seen 11,000 to 11,500. So it does look like it's reining in maybe perhaps some of the numbers. So we'll continue to track that one into the Wednesday trade. Doug Krisner, thank you so much. All right, Katie and I, and really everybody at Bloomberg, we've been talking a lot about healthcare lately, the industry, the companies, government policies, legislative initiatives. In keeping with that, this next company came to our attention. Respira Technologies calls itself a platform biotech company with a focus on aerosol science. So let's get him to explain it. Brian Quigley was the COO of the companies. He was named CEO of Respira Technologies just last week. He spent 16 years at Altria Group, 7 years as president and CEO at Altria's smokeless and innovative products and vapor businesses. And Brian joins us via Zoom from Virginia. Brian, it is great to have you here with Katie Greifel and myself. How are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me both.
So, hey, listen, I think a good starting point is your company and your key product, RX. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Sure. Thanks again, Carol and Katie. So Respira is a venture-backed health technology company focused on commercializing a proprietary inhalation-based drug delivery platform to help improve patient outcomes. And that platform has the ability to help improve outcomes across a host of indication areas. But currently, we are engaged with FDA CDER, which is the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, to be approved as the first inhalable prescription smoking cessation therapy to help the 20 million smokers who try to quit every year be more successful in their quit attempt.
So I need you to break that down for me a little bit more. Inhaled therapeutics for smoking cessation. So are people inhaling nicotine, for example? How does that work?
Correct. So when you talk to the smokers who are going to quit, every year, almost 60% of the smokers in the United States want to quit. The number one way they choose to quit is cold turkey, but they do have some therapeutics that they can use, some of the over-the-counter gums and patches, and also some of the prescription medicines as well. Those orally ingested nicotine-containing products, like Nicorette gum and patches, help people try to mitigate their withdrawal symptoms. But the issue is it doesn't deliver the nicotine to the body fast enough the way that they're used to with their cigarette. So our inhaled therapy, what it allows the patient to do under the care of a doctor, because this will be prescription only, allows them to go through a regimen where they replace smoking with using this device where they inhale an aerosol that is created by using no heat. Therefore, there's no thermal byproducts, and they're only getting pharmaceutical grade nicotine as part of their pharmaceutical drug product to help alleviate their withdrawal symptoms and hopefully give them a better chance of being able to actually quit.
All right, I know, Brian, that there's a bunch of people who are listening or watching us on YouTube who are saying, okay, so how is this different from an e-cigarette or a Juul or vaping? So what is the difference?
100%. So the fundamental difference is really how is the aerosol created? So e-cigarettes, you all use different versions of heat-based technologies to heat a liquid, and that liquid will have nicotine and other ingredients as well. And that aerosol can then be inhaled. Our device, because it uses, in essence, an innovation off of legacy vibrating mesh nebulizer technology, creates an aerosol without the use of any heat. So the fundamental difference is when you heat a liquid in an e-cigarette, although it is absolutely has fewer toxicants than a cigarette, that technology would not meet FDA CEDAR standard of safety because there are still some exposure to harmful compounds. Whereas in our device technology, because it utilizes no heat, you're really delivering only the pharmaceutical drug product into the lung with no other harmful compounds or exposure to carcinogens. So that's the fundamental difference.
So you're saying that when we use your device, if you're trying to quit smoking, you're not getting any of the nicotine or anything into your body? None at all?
No, you are delivering the nicotine. So it's delivering the nicotine, but none of the other byproducts that are created with a legacy e-cigarette technology that uses heat to create the aerosol.
So some fundamental differences there, but who do you view then as your competition? Is it a Juul?
I mean, really, the way I view it is our competition is everybody in the landscape who is playing in this tobacco market. It's an $80 billion market in the U.S., but kind of our focus is first and foremost to focus on those smokers, the 60% of smokers who every year say they want to quit, but ultimately fail, right? It is when you talk to them, the burden they feel. I think we've all had experiences of people we know and love who have struggled with the addiction of nicotine. It is an incredibly tough task to be successful in quitting. So ultimately, our goal is to bring this therapy, have it be authorized, have it be prescribed under the care of a patient, under the care of a doctor for the patient, which we believe will have significant impacts on the positive endpoints and helping save millions of lives and helping people stop smoking forever.
All right, we're going to continue this conversation. We are talking with Brian Quigley. He is the CEO of Respiro Technologies, joining us via Zoom from Virginia. We'll get back to him in just a moment. In the meantime, we do want to get another update on world and national news for you on this Tuesday. Here's Nancy Lyons in our DC newsroom. Hi, Nance.
Thanks, Carol. The U.S. is warning Americans to leave Ukraine over fears Russia could launch a new round of attacks against Ukrainian government facilities. Ukraine is preparing to celebrate its Independence Day tomorrow. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia, quote, may try to do something particularly nasty. Former President Donald Trump has filed a federal lawsuit seeking appointment of a neutral third party to review materials seized by the FBI during a search for classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate. Bloomberg Washington correspondent Joe Matthew has more.
The legal analysts we're speaking with say this may not go very far. The DOJ has likely already begun going through these documents, and they have a special team, a filter team, or a taint team as they're known, that goes through and removes privileged material before prosecutors get to see it. So this may be a stalling tactic, a delaying tactic, but it may not really change the trajectory of this case.
Bloomberg's Joe Matthew. Tennessee's former Republican House Speaker Glenn Quesada and his top aide have been arrested on federal charges, including bribery, kickbacks, and conspiracy to commit money laundering with federal funds. The 20-count indictment alleges the men created a mailer company and a fake persona to receive state funds. A jury has convicted 2 men of conspiring to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020 in a plot that prosecutors describe as a rallying cry for a U.S. civil war by anti-government extremists. It was the second trial for Adam Fox and Barry Croft Jr. after a jury back in April could not reach a unanimous verdict. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. Right now, you are listening and watching on YouTube Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Master along with Katie Greifeld. Katie in for Tim Stenovic on this Tuesday. And you know this name, John Doerr. He's a venture capitalist. He invested early in Google and Amazon. Well, the Kleiner Perkins chairman is tonight's guest on Bloomberg Wealth with David Rubenstein. That airs at 10 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio. And in this excerpt from the interview, Doerr explains how he made the wrong decision not backing Elon Musk.
We had the choice of backing a brilliant car designer by the name of Henrik Fisker or an ambitious, slightly crazy entrepreneur by the name of Elon Musk at Tesla. Well, we made the wrong decision, but Tesla did very, very well, and so did electric vehicles.
That, of course, is Kleiner Perkins' John Doerr. He is tonight's guest on Bloomberg Wealth with David Rubenstein. You can hear more of that interview on Bloomberg Wealth tonight at 10 p.m. on Bloomberg Radio. I mean, listen, Doerr has had an incredible track record to compensate maybe for missing out on Tesla and Elon Musk. He took early stakes in some of the world's most successful companies, Twitter, Amazon, Google parent Alphabet. More recently, he has invested in startups such as the delivery service DoorDash, software company Intuit, which we talked about, reported earnings and has been rallying in the after hours, and health tech firm Lumeris.
Yeah, so again, can't feel too bad for him, but still that sense of FOMO, I would imagine it must be real, especially Elon Musk. I mean, most famous man of the world, one of them at this point, I would say.
Absolutely. I think about the early days of Two with Kathy Wood and backing, she was out there front and center when it comes to Elon Musk and Tesla, when a lot of people were running in the other direction. So it's kind of interesting to see how that has played out. And he did mention Intuit, which we did mention, did report its earnings after the closing bell and is continuing to trade higher, Katie. It's up about 4% in the after hours.
Yeah, pretty dramatic moves. And contrast that with what we heard from Nordstrom, tail to earnings once again.
All right, well, check out Kleiner Perkins' John Doerr tonight at 10 on Bloomberg Radio with David Rubenstein of Bloomberg Wealth. This is Bloomberg Radio.
updates, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Let's begin with some of the news after the bell. Toll Brothers' earnings for the last quarter beat estimates. However, the company has cut its delivery guidance for the full year. Right now, shares in Toll are down by about 2.7%. We also heard from Intuit after the bell. The company's adjusted EPS for the last quarter came in above the average estimate, and shares right now higher by nearly 4.4%. Big disappointment for Nordstrom. The company cut revenue forecast for the full year. Nordstrom shares down by nearly 13% in the late U.S. session. Very light volume in the regular session. Summertime trading. Equity market finished mixed. NASDAQ comp is essentially flat on the day. We had the Dow weaker by about 0.5%. S&P 500 down about 0.2%. Energy, one of the bright spots. Energy prices, or shares, I should say, tracking the price of crude oil higher. Saudi Arabia's oil minister recently raised the possibility of reducing production as a way of balancing the crude oil market. WTI in the extended session right now up by about 3.8%. We're trading just around 93.85. 10-year Treasury up nearly 4 basis points in yield, given some little concern about the aggressive nature of the Fed in tightening, even in the midst of weak economic news. We were last quoted on the 10-year in yield terms at 3.05%. I'm Doug Krisner, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
So now you want to do Toll Brothers, huh?
Well, I did now only because, well, you beat me to it. And to be honest, I wasn't up to speed on it. Now I am in a better position. You like that transparency? Full disclosure here.
You are the most earnest, which is one of the many reasons we love you, Doug Krisner. All right, Doug, thank you so much. Carol Massar, Katie Greifeld, we are live in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio here at Bloomberg headquarters in New York City. I want to get back to our guest because Katie and I have been talking with Brian Quigley. He is the CEO of Respira Technologies. Respira, let me say it correctly, Technologies, was 16 years at Altria Group. He's still with us via Zoom from Virginia. Hey, Brian, one of the things I'm curious about, and you mentioned that you've applied the company for FDA approval to be the first inhaled, I'm not going to say it correct, inhaled therapeutics for smoking cessation. If you don't get the FDA approval, is there still a company?
Absolutely, there is. I mean, there are a host of other inhaled therapies that our device technology can help deliver improved patient outcomes. There are over 90 therapies today that are approved for delivery through a legacy vibrating mesh nebulizer, which has poor patient compliance due to the lack of patient maintenance and cleaning of their devices. So there's a huge opportunity in the already approved therapeutic space, but also working with companies who are developing new therapies to be delivered to a patient via route of inhalation, just as a beginning.
And let's talk about growth. Have you raised money at this point, or is that something you're exploring?
We have raised capital, actually, in 2022 in this very challenging environment. We're very close to closing out our A round, and we'll be announcing that in the next 30 to 45 days. And that funding we've been able to secure will help the company achieve its next milestone, which is its IND meeting with the FDA and our phase 1 human clinical study.
So what's kind of the rollout? What's the timeline here? I'm just thinking for our audience who's listening in on this, because it does sound like there's a lot of potential, but I am curious about the timeline.
Yeah, the new drug approval process is not for the faint of heart, but in our case, working with FDA, this is something that we know is a high priority for them. We know they're going to hold us to task, and we're going to be science-based. So we're generating the data to move through the process. But ultimately, we'll begin our phase 1 human clinicals next year, which will lead to a phase 2 and 3. And our goal is to be authorized in 2025.
I do want to switch gears a little bit and talk about cannabis, because I see in your bio that you've been an active investor in both the cannabis and alcohol spaces. You sit on the board of Musgrow Biologics and Belle Isle Craft Spirits. Obviously, this conversation that we're having about the FDA, when you think about regulation for cannabis at the federal level, it's been really stop and start. It feels like a sort of white whale of sorts. Just very curious to hear your views on that industry.
Yeah, I mean, the cannabis industry, I think it's been through a lot of challenges. At this stage, I don't know much, but I do know one thing, that when legalization or descheduling eventually does occur, the one thing that's going to happen the day before that is FDA will regulate cannabis, whether it be for medicinal, they already regulate for medicinal products, but for consumer products as well. And frankly, I think as the industry has gone through fits and starts and the patchwork of regulations, there really needs to be some oversight to provide clarity and consistency from a label and quality perspective. And I think that, technologies like ours that don't use heat in an FDA regulated environment have the potential to, even look at delivery of cannabinoids for medicinal purposes or in an FDA regulated context.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand, Brian. Like, ultimately, how do you see this business playing out? If you go to the Bloomberg terminal, we have a DES page, and often we have a revenue, breakdown for any particular company about kind of where, the revenue breakdown, where we're seeing the most sales within a particular company's business. And I am curious, is it smoking cessation? Is it actually, helping maybe with people who have various, illnesses where they need pharmaceuticals, kind of your plain vanilla pharmaceuticals fed to them? Is it the cannabis industry? So where do you see it breaking out?
I think I see the nicotine replacement therapy side of our business being a huge driver of the revenue. Just the size of the market there, the number of people who continue to smoke cigarettes and who are addicted and who are looking for solutions is going to be the driver of our revenue, I believe, for the first 5 years. And because in that case, not only do we have IP on the device, we have IP on our liquid drug product that contains nicotine. We will be able to reap the full financial benefits of that. Whereas in the other inhaled therapy spaces, that will really be through partnership with companies who have been working to identify, develop, and new molecules or new therapies. So I really do think that for the next 5 years, the nicotine replacement therapy business is going to be the key driver of the revenue. But I also think that we see there's opportunity for us to be a blockbuster drug once we get authorized.
One thing we ask for leaders of all types of institutions and companies, are you having supply chain problems in terms of building your product out? What are the restraints? And are you at all nervous about a slowdown that for something that's kind of something in the future, might that be problematic for you?
Yeah, I think all businesses are having to deal with supply chain challenges, in our case, because really, the device itself really is an electronic device. Luckily,
few chips in there. There are a few chips in there.
There are a few chips in there, batteries, but luckily, we work with Jabil and Radius, their innovation arm, who is our med device contract manufacturing arm, and they help us manage supply chain. So, I think with anything with proper planning, it can be managed. And in our case, because we have a very methodical plan we have to execute for FDA, we're able to manage any of those supply chain risks pretty effectively.
And just about 30 seconds, you are a clinical stage company. Walk us through the next several years for your business. You were founded in 2018. What do the next 4 or 5 years look like for Respira?
In about 30 seconds.
Yep. The next 4 to 5 years are continue to engage with FDA and execute our clinical studies to get the NRT authorized. And in that process, be engaging with pharmaceutical companies for partnerships to not only scale that, but also scale new therapeutics.
All right, gonna leave it on that note. Brian, thank you so much. Look forward to hearing more in the future. Brian Quigley, he's the Chief Executive Officer of Respira Technologies, joining us via Zoom from Virginia. All right, that's gonna do it for the Tuesday edition of Bloomberg Business Week. Continuing to watch some stocks on the move in the after hours. Intuit is up about 5% following earnings. Toll Brothers is down about 3% following earnings, and Nordstrom, Katie, is down almost 13%. Ouch.
The earnings season continues to give and to take, and it's been really interesting to follow.
All right, everybody, have a safe and good evening. This is Bloomberg.